It's your fault we're out of gas, Patricia exclaimed, slamming a closed fist against the car's dashboard. We should have stopped when you spotted the last gas station. Your so-called shortcut has only gotten us stranded in the middle of nowhere. Patricia looked down at the back of Michael's head, her expression incensed, but he ignored her rant. Seemingly undisturbed, Michael continued sorting through the glove box contents. Here, I think we're close to here, Michael said finally, moving his index finger along a network of lines on the map he had unfolded. Or maybe here? If we can find someone with gas to spare, we can make it back to the highway. Then we'll be at your departed mother's plantation home before midnight. Patricia sighed, exasperated. There's a gas tank in the trunk. Let me get it, Michael offered, avoiding Patricia's angry gaze. He leaned over to open the side door before stepping out into the dirt road. Michael hurried to their sports coupe's roomy trunk, taking the car keys out of his pocket with a jingle. He propped the trunk open and searched through the packed storage compartment, objects clanging. Patricia waited sullenly up front, wincing at each noise. Opening the passenger side door and stepping out, Patricia straddled the hood, the car's bright headlights shining in the swampy woods around them. They were stuck on a deserted road and no one was in sight. How did she ever let Michael convince her that taking this circuitous route would save time? She'd rather have been late for the reading of the family will or even have missed it entirely. As Patricia leaned against the car's front grille, deeply inhaling the humid night air, she saw a light in the distance. The light moved slowly between the sagging cypress trees, their heavy branches drooping above the marshy ground. The curious orb of light bobbed and weaved, growing larger, then dimming, even as it seemed to stay in the same distance from the car. The light drifted upwards, then sideways, disappearing for an instant behind the tree trunk. Then, without warning, the ball of light zigzagged rapidly and winked out, the space among the trees entirely dark once more. Rubbing her eyes, Patricia blinked, then peered into the nighttime woodland. The ball of light was gone, as if it had never been there. What was that? Patricia asked herself, scanning the tree line off the road. It wasn't a flashlight or anything. It was too high above the ground. Behind her, the trunk slammed shut, and Patricia momentarily forgot about the strange light. Michael strode up, holding a red metal gas can by its handle. Got it, he said triumphantly. It was buried under the spare and some junk. I need to clean that trunk when we get home. Now let's see if we can find someone with extra gas. He looked ahead, hopefully, searching the dark road in front of them, the full moon providing some limited light. There should be houses along the road somewhere. Patricia rolled her eyes and clenched her teeth, shaking her head. She felt like screaming. Michael, you have no idea where we are. We could be hiking along this road all night, and it's late. We can't just knock on someone's door and demand gasoline in the middle of the night. Hey, let's not fight now, Michael scolded, keeping his voice calm and measured. Trust me, we'll find someone who'll help us. If there's a light on in the house window, we can knock. People stay up late in these parts. Glancing at his wristwatch, Michael opened the car door to shut off the headlights and lock the doors. He then began walking down the road, not turning to see if Patricia was following him. Patricia reluctantly went after him, pushing herself away from her seat on the car hood with a groan. The empty gas can clanked noisily as Michael's leg occasionally struck it. Patricia, don't marry this fool, Patricia told herself as she glanced behind him. The ball of light had reappeared, hovering again near the tree line. The light seemed to be trailing them from behind the trees, but it slipped into darkness as Patricia stopped to watch it. Michael, wait, Patricia ordered, now beginning to become afraid. Come back. There's something behind us. You mean like the swamp? Michael said, still walking, not bothering to turn around. There was a light moving among the trees over there, Patricia said, anxious. It's gone now, but I saw it right before you got the gas can, too. I think it's following us. Patricia appeared into the woods on either side of the narrow road, searching for another sign of the bizarre phenomenon. Patty, it's nothing, Michael admonished. Michael had stopped to look at Patricia, but now turned to trudge back down the road again, the hollow sound of the gas can banging against his leg echoing behind him. No, really, Michael, I think something's following us. We could be in real danger. Patricia ran up to Michael's side, glancing furtively behind. The road's surface was uneven, and there was a clear night sky overhead, the bright stars and full moon leading the couple. Michael hoped they'd find a house soon. If not, he realized they'd have to walk the length of the road back to the car and spend the night there. There was a silence behind them for some time, and then Michael asked, How much do you think your mother left you? Is there a chance she might have left you out of her will altogether? Patricia stared ahead as they walked, not answering right away.
She could have. Lucas was always her favorite. I was Dad's favorite, but Dad died first. Lucas may have gotten everything to the tune of several million.
I hope not, Michael retorted. Your spoiled brat of a younger brother doesn't deserve a dime of your family's money. He's never even had a job.
I know, Patricia replied wearily. But what can I do? Mom's last will and testament are legally binding.
You can contest it, Michael suggested, his tone encouraging. Retain a good attorney. Lucas is too much of a spineless twerp to put up a serious fight. He might not even know how to hire a lawyer. Patricia laughed, looking up into the night sky as she did.
You might be right,
Patricia said, smiling for the first time that evening.
I never saw him read anything but comic books when we were kids. Plus, he's a dropout.
Further up the road, Patricia spied a light flicker on the window of a distant dwelling.
There, Michael,
Patricia blurted out, pointing into the woods.
There's a house with its lights on. Let's check it out.
Michael nodded without saying anything, hopeful but tired from lugging the gas can over miles of bad road. Michael and Patricia stepped off the dirt road and into the grassy shoulder, walking through an open field before reaching a line of cypress trees. The house was mostly hidden within its own grove. Patricia suspected it'd be almost unnoticeable during the day. More a single-story shack than a house, the place was made of flimsy wooden planks and rested on a raised platform of sorts. A short set of steps led to the front porch on which 2 rocking chairs were stationed as if guarding the entrance. The light came from a grimy window next to the front door.
You really want to go in there? After seeing this place up close, I'm not so sure,
Patricia said uneasily, glancing over at Michael as he put his gas can down on the grass. Of course, why not? Michael replied, seemingly unfazed by the shack's ramshackle exterior. I'm sure whoever lives here is friendly. People are very hospitable in these parts. Michael blithely walked up the steps and knocked on the shack's rickety door twice, pausing between knocks. There was no answer.
Why don't you try the doorknob?
Asked Patricia.
It can't hurt, if they really are friendly, that is.
Patricia stood back in the shack's yard, hoping Michael hadn't naively led them into a difficult situation. Michael tried the door's handle and turned clumsily, improperly fixed into its socket. The door creaked open, revealing a solitary room with a round table, chairs, and some moldy furniture scattered about its corners. What looked like the dining room space was fully lit by a lantern hanging above the wood table. It cast long shadows across the room. Shall we go in? The lights are on, but no one's home, or so it seems anyway. Michael opened the door wider and gestured for Patricia to step inside the shack. If the owners come home, we can just say we got lost and sought shelter for the night.
What if they shoot us dead instead?
Patricia countered, amazed by how oblivious Michael could be. Patricia began to think that this was the final straw and that a breakup was in order once the two of them returned to civilization. Michael walked in and looked around, ignoring Patricia's question. The walls of the shack were covered with mounted deer heads and other hunting trophies, wood carvings of what appeared to be old family portraits in tarnished frames. An elaborate cuckoo clock out of place in the shack's otherwise dingy interior was fixed prominently on the opposite wall. Next to the clock was a second door facing them behind the wood table and chairs. Look, there are some plates on the table, Michael said, excitedly gesturing towards a greasy pile of dishes and utensils. It looks like someone's eating dinner here, probably tonight. Maybe they'll be back soon? Michael looked down at the pile of plates, missing whomever it was had eaten here alone. Patricia made a quick check of the front porch and the yard and then walked inside the shack to join Michael.
Shall we check the back room?
She proposed after surveying what was around her, her tone somewhat irritated.
If they're asleep and we wake them up, we'll get shot just the same as if we surprised them coming home.
Michael smirked, looked around the room for a second time, and then peeked out the front, not seeing anyone in the woods nearby. The sounds of croaking frogs and other less visible wildlife filled the night, steady in the low din they made. Your first time? Michael requested, motioning towards the shack's back door. Disregarding Michael's invitation, Patricia stepped out into the front porch and examined the twin rocking chairs. They were worn, but in good repair, not neglected like the shack's outer walls and dilapidated roof.
We must be right near the mouth of the swamp's tributary in these woods,
Patricia said aloud, her mind wandering for a moment as she spoke.
The cabin is likely built on a platform to keep from sinking.
Without saying a word, Michael opened the back room's door, noting that Patricia was facing away from him on the porch. Michael then said in a quiet voice, almost whispering, "Patricia, come look at this." Patricia turned and saw Michael standing in the open doorway to the back room, staring down at something out of view. Patricia joined Michael at the threshold of the room. Imprisoned in the wooden cages on the otherwise bare floor were two children, a boy and a girl, perhaps 10 years old. The children were filthy and dressed in ragged clothes, but didn't appear to have been starved or otherwise maltreated. They leaned against the sides of their small cages made of tightly bound sticks, asleep. "My God, what have we found?" Patricia gasped at once, searching for a way to free the children. Michael continued to stare down at the sleeping children, dumbfounded. Rattling its bars, Patricia searched for a way to force the cage open in the unlit room. There was nothing else here except the two cages, a square window without curtains being the room's only other feature. There was also no door to either cage, nothing even for a young child the boy's size to crawl through to escape. How the children had even been placed inside the cages was uncertain. As Patricia crouched, her hands on the cage bars, the boy abruptly opened his eyes, staring directly at her. He scrambled to his knees and, jabbing his fingers out between the fastened sticks, began screaming at Patricia. "Let us out! Please, ma'am! We're trapped in here by our pa!" The boy was quite agitated, shaking his cage violently and clenching his teeth as he struggled to free himself. The girl woke and then began wailing, also grasping the stick bars. Michael spoke for the first time since inviting Patricia into the room. "Let's get out of here, Patty. We can sleep in the car tonight. We'll be safe in the morning." Michael then began to back away, staring fixedly at the two now manic children as he crossed the door's threshold. "No, Michael, we can't just leave them. These kids need our help. Someone's keeping them as prisoners." Patricia kept feeling around the cage as the boy screeched, begging to be let out. She still couldn't find a latch or any obvious way to pry the cage open. Finally, Patricia asked the boy, "You said your pa is keeping you trapped in here. Why did he put you in the cages? And where is your pa now?" The boy was spitting as he cried and shrieked, mucus running from his nose. He then became calm enough to answer Patricia. "'Cause he's scared of us," the boy said, trembling. "Me and my sister Violet. He says he needs to hold us here after our mama died." Violet had also become quiet, as if waiting to see what might happen. Stepping back into the room, Michael reached down to grab Patricia's shoulder. "Come on, let's go," he said adamantly. "We can't get involved in this." Michael then tried to pull Patricia to her feet, but she resisted. Firmly brushing away his hand, Patricia turned and stood up, facing Michael. "Michael, these children might die without us." She crouched again to search for an opening in Violet's cage. Both then heard a whistling sound coming from outside the shack, as if someone were humming a tune. "Their pa, he's coming," Michael said sharply, moving away from Patricia. "Close the door. We have to leave." Patricia looked at the children with an apologetic expression and left to join Michael. The children cried as the door was closed on them, but then hushed themselves, afraid of their pa. Michael and Patricia began to rush towards the shack's door when they came face to face with an old man walking in from the porch. He carried a satchel over his shoulder and a battered shotgun slung over an arm. The old man recoiled in surprise when he saw the uninvited guests, but then quickly leveled his weapon at them. "Who are you folks?" the old man demanded, a finger on his shotgun's trigger. "How'd you get in?" The old man then wheezed and coughed, seemingly as frightened as he was angry at the intrusion. "The door was open, sir," Michael replied quickly, carefully watching the shotgun barrel aimed at his chest. "Our car broke down. We saw the light and came in. We need help." Michael and Patricia slowly put their hands up as the old man continued pointing his gun. "It was now, was it? 'Cause I always lock this here door when I leave. Otherwise the possums get in." The old man backed up and reached to close the front door without looking behind him. He then steadied his shotgun in a two-handed grip, saying, "Both of you sit down at the table, and no funny business neither." Seeing no other choice available, Michael and Patricia took their seats on the tottering chairs, which were barely sturdy enough to support their weight. The old man stood not far from them, his shotgun at the ready. "What are your names? You two married?" the old man questioned, studying Michael and Patricia with a cautious eye. He stepped closer to get a better look. No, we're engaged," Michael replied. "We're driving on the road to our family home when we ran out of gas. If you have any to spare, we can just be on our way. My gas can is out in the yard and I have some cash to pay." Both Michael and Patricia nervously kept their hands visible on the table. "You didn't take nothing, did you? You opened that door?" The man waved his shotgun barrel toward the closed door which hid the two caged children.
"No, sir,"
Patricia replied, fighting to keep her face calm.
"We had just walked in when we heard you whistling. Please, we don't want trouble. If you don't have any gasoline, we'll leave."
Patricia tried to smile hopefully at the old man, but managed to only look fearful. The old man was silent as he continued to scrutinize Michael and Patricia. He suddenly turned to rack his shotgun on the wall mount and then took a seat at the table, putting his satchel down next to his chair. "Name's Eli. What's yours?" the old man said. Patricia noted that he didn't extend his hand. "I'm Michael, and this is Patricia, my fiancée," Michael answered shakily, feeling relieved that their tense situation seemed to have diffused. "Patricia's family is from farther downstate." "You don't say," Eli said keenly, his eyes now resting only on Patricia. "Then you've heard about these here woods? What happened here long ago?" Grinning, Eli revealed a patchwork of missing teeth. Patricia glanced at Michael uncomfortably, wondering whether they'd gotten out of a dangerous situation or not.
"No, I don't,"
she said.
"I mostly grew up away from my hometown, and I've only come back here for this trip. What happened here?"
"A terrible crime," Eli said, a touch of macabre sadness in his tone. "Two young'uns, a boy and a girl, were done killed in cold blood by their pa. He done killed his wife, too. The bodies they were never found." Eli then sat in silence, deliberately regarding to Michael and Patricia before continuing with his tale. "Their pa took his two young'uns out into the Bayou woods where the bald cypress trees stand alone." He recited almost poetically, his voice growing more sinister. "He found a deep part near the shore where the bayou ends, where the waters are dark and murky. He drowned the boy first, and then his precious little daughter without a drop of pity. Their small bodies sank, dragged down into the heart of the swamp itself. Next he came back for his wife," Eli said as he went on, his words now hauntingly quiet, approaching a whisper. "She knew what he had done, so she stabbed him with a knife, cutting the man." At once, Patricia noticed a faint scar impressed across Eli's nose and over his cheek. It looked like it had healed long ago. "They fought for that blade, and then the man stabbed his wife until she lay dead on the cabin floor," Eli pronounced, his voice trailing off. "He pushed her body out into the bayou waters, where it sank like a stone. Lost forever. Forever." Eli stared at a bare spot on the shack's floor where the wood planks had been splintered as if hacked. Patricia glanced at the wall behind Eli and saw a faded portrait hanging there, a grainy family photo. There was a man, his wife, and two children, a boy and a girl. The man was almost certainly Eli, but many years younger.
"Michael, run!"
Patricia cried, leaping from her seat and dashing towards the closed door of the shack. She grabbed the spindly door's awkward knob and flung it open, running into the swamplands, narrowly avoiding tripping over Michael's gas can as she went. As Patricia ran, she heard no sounds of pursuit behind her, only the croaking of the bullfrogs and peculiar calls of nocturnal birds. Under the moonlight, Patricia realized she couldn't find the road where she and Michael had first discovered the shack. It was gone. The swamp's canopy hung over her as she thrashed at the dense woods surrounding the shack. The moonlight was bright above the trees, but she could no longer see the light from the shack, the closed darkness of the woods enveloping her. Ahead was the bayou, languidly flowing through the low woodland. Patricia leaned against a cypress, the trees fanning leaves rustling in the warm nighttime breeze.
"No one is following me," she thought. "Michael, he must have run out after I made it away."
The moon's visible light grew dimmer as Patricia advanced further into the swampy woods. Feeling the moist soil beneath her shoes sag, her footing unsteady, she again clung to a cypress tree to breathe easily, resting as her journey through the swamp's treacherous underbrush grew increasingly arduous. There was a light ahead. It was quite small, almost a pinpoint, but Patricia could see it through the foliage swaying in front of her. The light was stationary.
"Perhaps a handheld lamp or flashlight,"
Patricia considered, worrying that whomever she might find could be a threat. Struggling forward, Patricia climbed over moss-covered cypress roots and wild brambles, her feet beginning to sink.
It's soggy here, like muck. Gotta watch where I step, Patricia said to herself, now treading cautiously.
The clear moonlight sparkled over the bayou's waters, the pinpoint of light still ahead, unwavering.
There should be a shallow part here, but I'll still get wet,
Patricia decided, searching for a place to circumvent the bayou's waters. The muddy waters seeped into Patricia's shoes, soaking her socks and feet. She was not quite waist deep in the bayou's water when she began to reach the shore on the other side of the tributary, panicking briefly as something brushed against her leg in the fouled river. Patricia could now see there were not one but two small lights beaming out from the dark. As she waded through the bayou's lily-pad-covered surface, growing closer to the shore, the outline of a figure began to form. It was a young boy. He stood completely still by the water's edge. Hurrying, the water splashing around her, Patricia paused her labored strides and peered at the shadowy figure. It was the boy from the shack, his thick hair now combed down over to the side of his face. The two lights came from the boy's eyes. They shone eerily in the darkness of the woods.
How did he escape his cage?
Patricia thought, startled.
And how did he get so far ahead of me? Hello? It's me from the cabin,
Patricia called out to the boy.
I'm almost to the shore. Can you grab my hand and help pull me in? I seem to be sinking.
The boy was silent, too distraught to consider what might be happening. Patricia pushed forward but began to sink even further into the silt bed of the bayou. Standing waist deep in the waters and within reach of the shore, Patricia now found she couldn't move.
This spot is like molasses. I'm being sucked under,
Patricia realized, trying to press ahead but failing. The boy only continued to stand in silence, his eyes glowing with whitish light as Patricia slowly sank below the bayou's surface.
Oh God, save me! Don't just stand there!
Patricia's cries were cut off as her head slipped into the water with a gurgle, her body dragged beneath by the deadly trap. As she was submerged in the waters of the swamp, the boy watching her untimely death vanished, the ripples on the surface now the only trace remaining of Patricia. Eli opened the door to the shack and quickly glanced over the front yard littered with debris. The bullfrogs and other nighttime inhabitants of the woodland swamp croaked, hummed, and chirped, forming a discordant yet soothing chorus as Eli spied what he was looking for. He picked up the red gas can, returned to the porch, and placed the empty can next to his rocking chair. Sliding it to the chair's scooped seat, Eli gripped his armrest and began to rock back and forth. He went steadily with no urgency. After a time, he reached into his overalls bib pocket and removed a leather wallet and keychain. Examining Michael's driver's license, he decided he'd just burn all of it once he pushed the car into the swamp some miles down the road. A whitish light soon bobbed near the tree line, swirling and then bouncing until it was joined by a second ball of palish light, weaving, circling, and finally hovering in place. Eli made a thin smile and stood up to go back inside the shack, whistling in anticipation. There was a quiet knock at the door. Eli answered and found two young children, a boy and a girl, standing on the porch gazing up at him. They smiled brightly with the boy exclaiming, "Pa, we came home now." Eli smiled in return and then led his children inside, closing the shack's door after them.